Dear brothers and respected sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. We have reached the night of Arbaeen. As we look with envy and with longing at those friends of ours and those family members of ours who have embarked or now finished that blessed walk, that walk of love from Najaf to Karbala, I thought I'd start today with a couple of narrations, a couple of blessed ahadith about the importance of ziyarah of Imam al-Hussein, about the status of Imam al-Hussein himself, and then about the Arbaeen as well. So first of all, in a hadith that we have from somebody called a narrator who is an important companion of the 5th and 6th Imam, called Muhammad bin Muslim, he narrates that both the 5th and the 6th Imam alayhim as-salam, they said, إن الله تعالى عوض الحسين عليه السلام من قتله. Allah Ta'ala, in exchange for the martyrdom of Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam, Allah gave 4 things to Imam Hussein. What did He give him? أن جعل الإمامة في ذريته والشفاء في تربته وإجابة الدعاء عند قبره ولا تعد أيام سائره جائيا وراجعا من عمره. That first of all, his progeny it was in his progeny that the remainder of the Imams were. All the Imams after Abi Abdullah al-Hussein alayhi salam were from the descendants of Imam al-Hussein. The second one was that there is a cure in his turba, khak al-shafa, that blessed pure dust of the land of Karbala. The third one was that prayers and supplication at his grave are going to be accepted for sure. And then the last one, this is very interesting, that the time that a Zair spends going to his grave and coming back is not counted from his life. So if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has ordained that somebody's going to live 60 years, for example, and from that 60 years they spend a few weeks going to Karbala and coming back, that is not going to count in that 60 years. That was one hadith about the importance of Imam al-Hussein and the fada'il, the special station of Imam al-Hussein. Specifically about walking to Karbala, we have many ahadith that talk about the merit of going to Karbala walking. In one of them it says, "Man ata al-Hussein alayhi salam mashiyan." Somebody who goes walking to Hussein alayhi salam, for every step that they take, كَتَبَ اللَّهُ لَهُ بِكُلِّ خُطْوَةٍ أَلْفَ حَسَنَةٍ. God gives them 1,000 good deeds for every step that they take. And then God erases 1,000 sins for every step that they take. And God raises their station 1,000 levels. Such a hadith just give us an idea of how important Imam Hussein alayhi salam is. As I said in the beginning of the talk yesterday, that we should really appreciate and give thanks to Allah that we have this opportunity to renew our connection to Imam al-Hussein in these gatherings. We didn't get the chance, unfortunately, this year to go to Karbala. But the idea behind the ziyarah is something that we can strive to attain even from here. What is that idea? The idea is to renew our allegiance, to connect to Imam al-Hussein, to strengthen that bond of wilayah. I said yesterday that wilayah is not just a matter of loving the Imam and crying for the Imam. If that was the case, then some of the killers of the Imams would be counted as those people that had wilayah. You might be shocked to hear that or think about that, but it's true that at times some of the enemies of the Ahlul Bayt, some of the people that even killed the Ahlul Bayt, they really loved the Ahlul Bayt at the same time. The 6th Imam alayhi salam was killed by one of the first Abbasid caliphs, Mansur al-Dawanati, who founded the city of Baghdad. La'natullahi alayh. There's an important narration that when he gets the news of the death of Imam Sadiq, he starts to cry in front of his slave. He wasn't pretending, he wasn't showing off. Why would he want to pretend just in front of his slave? It wasn't a public gathering. Even though he was an enemy of the Imam who had himself ordered that the Imam be killed, at the same time he knew who the Imam was. He was somebody who, before the Banu al-Abbas came into power, he was very close to the Imam. He loved the Imam. So just love and just crying doesn't make us people who have wilaya. Wilaya is that bond amongst all the believers, first of all, that the believers are one unit, one group, as opposed to the disbelievers. And then they have that leader, that Imam, that Wali of Allah, who is guiding them and moving them in a certain direction. So wilaya, part of it is the love and the tears and, for example, coming to such gatherings, inshallah. But another part of it is to actually follow the Imams and obey the Imams and learn what they expect from us in our day-to-day life. Learn how to control our desire, how to control our anger, be an obedient servant of Allah. So those were two narrations I mentioned. The last narration I wanted to mention before we go back to the topic of our discussion is specifically about the Arbaeen. In a very famous narration from Imam Hassan al-Askari alayhi salam, he says that there are 5 signs of a believer. May Allah give us the tawfiq to have all of these signs. As you'll see, some of them are not that easy. The first one is that a believer is somebody who prays 51 rak'ats of prayer every day. You guys must know that there's 17 rak'ats that are wajib, and then if you take all the nawafil for every one of the wajib prayers, there's another 34 rak'at, and then 11 rak'ats of namaz al-shab, salatul layl, together would make, or maybe that 34 is including that, right? I think 34 is including, anyways. Together it all becomes 51 rak'ats of prayer. So that's the first sign. The second sign is the ziyarat of Arbaeen. That a believer is somebody who does the ziyarah of Imam al-Hussein al-Arbaeen. The third sign of a believer is that he wears a ring on his right hand. At-takhattum bil-yameen. The fourth one is that he puts his forehead on dust for the prayer. And the fifth one is that he says the Bismillah loudly in the prayer. So anyways, I just wanted to kind of start off with these blessed riwayat to remind ourselves of the importance of ziyarah, the importance of connecting to Imam al-Hussein, and that the day of Arbaeen is also a very special day that we have, alhamdulillah, reached. So all of us tomorrow, inshallah, we should try to put aside a couple of minutes to recite that important ziyarat of Imam al-Hussein for the day of Arbaeen, inshallah. Sallallahu ala Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad. So the topic that we were discussing, inshallah, that we discussed yesterday and in the next, today and tomorrow we want to continue, was talking about what happened to the Muslim society prior to the tragedy of Karbala. In that ziyarat of Arbaeen that I just mentioned, that we will recite tomorrow, we say that Imam Hussein alayhi salam badala muhjatahu liyastanqidha ibadaka min al-jahala. That Imam Hussein, we address Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Imam Hussein was somebody who gave his blood, his blessed life. Why? To save the servants of Allah from jahala, from ignorance. So that begs the question that what was the ignorance that Imam Hussein alayhi salam was standing up against? What had happened to the Muslim society that things were so bad that Imam Hussein had to do what he did? If we just stop and think about it for a second, if Imam Hussein wanted to, he could have stayed in Medina. He could have just been somebody who read Quran, taught people the Quran, a very holy figure, the way there were other scholars and other companions of the Prophet that were like that. But Imam Hussein alayhi salam was different. He began a rebellion. He picked up his sword and he launched a rebellion. He called people from Kufa, from Basra to join his cause, and he took up arms against Yazid. So what was the purpose behind his qiyam, behind this uprising of his? What were those values that he stood for? And what were those values in society that upset him so much that he wanted to stand up to take a stance against them? That's what we want to, inshallah, look at. Yesterday we talked about the first of the 3 different kind of values, the 3 problems that the Muslim society was afflicted with after the death of the Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. that it caused Imam Hussein to do what he did. The first one that we talked about yesterday was the unequal distribution of wealth. And in a lot of detail, alhamdulillah, we talked about how the money that was pouring into the Muslim world after the Prophet's demise was unequally divided, and there came about an elite rich class that was corrupt, that was arrogant, that had monopolized all the power in their hands. And that was something that Amirul Mu'mineen, that the Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam were totally against. So if we want to give a parable, a nice parable is this, that the Holy Prophet ﷺ, he had put the Muslim society on the right course. It was like a train that was moving in a certain direction. But after his demise, with all these bad policies that were followed and all these unqualified leaders that took up the helm of leadership of the Muslim society, it was as if that train went off the train tracks. It went astray, and it started to deviate further and further and further, until things got so bad that we see the tragedy of Karbala happen. So for a little while, for 5 years, Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam was the Khalifa, and he tried whatever he could to take that train back to the right course that it should be on. But such bad qualities had become deep-rooted in the Muslim society that nobody was willing to help Amir al-Mu'mineen and Imam al-Hassan after him. The elite class of society that we talked about yesterday, they were the same people that fought against Amir al-Mu'mineen in Jamal and in Siffin. They were people who knew that they could not tolerate that justice of Ali. So today, very quickly, before I come to the second problem in the Muslim society that Imam Hussein alayhi salam was taking a stance against, I wanted to just quickly show in Nahj al-Balagha how we can see that Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam was deadly against this financial problem that had arisen and that had arose in the Muslim world. This discrimination in terms of the distribution of wealth, this monopolization of wealth in the hands of just a few people was something that Imam Ali alayhi salam did not accept at all. So very quickly, I'll quote two different one sermon and one letter. Okay, I won't quote it, I'll just kind of summarize what's being said. First of all, in sermon number 16 of Nahj al-Balagha, which is a very, very important sermon because it is the first sermon that Imam Ali alayhi salam gives in the Masjid of Kufa, or Masjid al-Madinah, I think rather, Masjid al-Madinah, when he is appointed, when the people come and they give him the allegiance, the bay'ah to become the Khalifa, the very first khutbah that he gives is this, sermon number 16 of Nahj al-Balagha. When a politician comes into power, what does he want to do? The first talk that he wants to give, he wants to outline what the policy of his government is going to be. He wants to tell people what he is going to embark upon when he is leading the country. Right? So in this sermon 16, what does Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam say? In one part of it he says, أَلَا وَإِنَّ بَلِيَّتَكُمْ قَدْ عَادَتْ كَحَيْئَتِهَا يوم بعث الله نبيه صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم. He says that he's addressing the Muslim community and he's saying the problem that the Muslim community is afflicted with today is the same problem that was there at the time of the Prophet. See, I said Jahiliyyah, that Imam Hussein, his tragedy happened at a time of Jahiliyyah, as we saw in Ziyarat Arbaeen. Same thing with Imam Ali alayhi salam. He's identifying that the society of the Muslim world in the year, what was it, like 35 AH when he came into power, is the same the problem that has afflicted this Muslim society is the same problem that afflicted the society of the Holy Prophet. What was that problem? We can sum it up, we can summarize that problem as shirk. That no longer was the rule of Allah, the desire of Allah being implemented. One example is that financial discrimination that I spoke about yesterday, that some people had taken all the money for themselves. And that seems to be something that Amir al-Mu'mineen is referring to. In the same khutbah he goes on to say, وَالَّذِي بَعَثَهُ بِالْحَقِّ. There's a qasam by Allah. لَتُبَلْبَلُنَّ بَلْبَلَةً وَلَتُغَرْبَلُنَّ غَرْبَلَةً وَلَتُصَاطُنَّ صَوْتَ الْقِدَرِ حَتَّى يَعُودَ أَسْفَلَكُمْ أَعْلَاكُمْ وَأَعْلَاكُمْ أَسْفَلَكُمْ. He says, I swear to Allah that when I am in power, I'm going to shake things up. I'm going to stir this Muslim society the same way you would stir a pot. Imagine you have like a pot with like food in it and spices. Your mother is putting spices in it and then she's like mixing it around with a spoon and the spices are going from the top to the bottom. Ali alayhi salam is saying, I am going to do that to the Muslim world. Those people who were hidden, they were at the bottom of the society, I'm going to bring them forward. People of taqwa, people like Malik Ashtar, people like Uthman ibn Hunayf, people who were not heard of before, I'm going to bring them forward. Whereas those elite, corrupt, arrogant, rich people who were till now leading the Muslim society when they did not deserve to lead the Muslim society, they are going to be taken back. The likes of Talha and Zubair that we spoke about yesterday. This was one sermon that was very important. Another letter, I leave it up to you, dear brothers and sisters, to refer to it if you want to. Letter number 45 of Nahj al-Balagha is a letter that Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam writes to his governor in Basra, Uthman ibn Hunayf. Imam is reprimanding him. He's upset with him. What did Uthman ibn Hunayf do to upset Amir al-Mu'mineen? He went to a gathering that Imam Ali alayhi salam did not expect him to go to such a gathering. Was there alcohol being served at that gathering? No. Was there dancing? Was there haram music? Was there some sin like that happening? Of course not. This is a governor of Amir al-Mu'mineen. The standard of what Amir al-Mu'mineen expects from his governor is way, way higher than other people. It's not somebody who would ever go to a gathering of sin, but just the fact that he was in a gathering of elite rich people, where poor people were not allowed to come, Imam Ali is upset with him. He says, I never expected that my governor would be somebody who would be, just kind of drinking chai, or I don't know, with the rich peoples, what do you call it, like schmoozing, or like chilling with the rich people of society. So, dear brothers and sisters, these are values, Islamic values that the Ahlul Bayt espoused, the Ahlul Bayt represented. We need to also take these values seriously in our lives, and also we need to realize that a society that is not like this is not an ideal society Islamically. If we see that we live in a society that does not have these values, okay, maybe we don't have a choice. There's nowhere else we can go to in the world that is Madinat Fadila, that is like a perfect world, right? But at the end of the day, we should know in our heart that we do not subscribe to the values that may be common in a society that we live in. We have our own quality and criteria that the Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam have taught us as to how a society should be. And this financial, economic aspect that we have discussed so far was one aspect of it. Sallallahu ala Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. We now move on to the second quality, the second vice in society that had become widespread in the Muslim world, that Imam Hussein alayhi salam was upset with, that he took a stance against, that he told people that I do not accept this. I am doing what I am doing. I am standing up. I am taking my women folk and my children to begin this qiyam against Yazid, to try to overthrow Yazid. Why? Because of things such as this. This was that the rule of Allah, the sharia of Allah had been forgotten, had been openly trampled upon. So in a sense, the economic discussion that we had so far is related to this. That is also part of the sharia, part of the teachings of Islam. It's not totally separate, but here what I wanted to focus on was simply the wajibat and the muharramat. The law of Allah that is wajib was not being implemented. And that which is haram was being openly done. We all know about Yazid, la'natullah alayhi, and what sins he used to commit openly. But even before Yazid, things like I said, it was when the death of the Prophet happened, the Muslim world was taken off course. And slowly things became worse and worse. And there were many examples from far before Yazid of the Sharia being ignored, being openly ignored in the Muslim world. I want to give you guys 3 examples of this. And then inshallah we'll take a few lessons and we'll move to the musibah, because today is the night of Arbaeen. We want to inshallah have a slightly longer remembrance of the musibah. The first example was that very shortly after the death of the Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, there was somebody in the northeast part of the Arabian Peninsula who was the head of a tribe. He was somebody who was a companion of the Prophet. The Prophet had made him in charge of collecting zakat money from his tribe. His name was Malik bin Nuwayra. Malik bin Nuwayra. After the death of the Prophet, he refuses to pay zakat to the Caliph, to the Islamic government. And so the Islamic government sends the Muslim general Khalid bin Walid to go and investigate and go look into what's happening, and maybe even by force take the money of zakat that they should be paying. But instead of just taking the money and looking into the situation, Khalid goes with his army to the northeastern part of the Jazirat al-Arab, the Arabian Peninsula, and he kills Malik and the community of Malik, they tell him, why are you fighting us? We are Muslim, we are praying namaz, we are saying the adhan, we believe in Islam. But not only does he kill this guy Malik, Khalid bin Walid, the general of the Muslim army, he kills Malik, and he also does a very filthy deed with the family of Malik. The Muslim community is in shock when they hear about this. They expect that Khalid should be executed. There is a penal law in Islam that when somebody kills an innocent person, when somebody does that filthy deed that he did, he has to be executed. But the Islamic government does nothing about it. They forgive him. And he is allowed to remain in an important position in the Muslim world. What is this? This is a mockery of the Sharia. A second example, about 10 years later. Here, for certain reasons, I won't give the name of who I'm talking about. But after the majlis, you can ask me, I'll tell you. Maybe you might even know. There was an Iranian in the city of Medina who killed an important person. And then he killed himself. He committed suicide. Now the son of that important person wanted to take revenge. And that guy had already killed himself. So what did he do? He went around and killed 2 other Iranians who it was not proven that they even had a role to play in the murder of that important person who had initially been killed. The son of the guy who got killed, he went and killed 2 other Iranians with no proof, and he even killed the young daughter of that killer. A young daughter. What did the young daughter do? What was her crime? But because he was from an important family, he's forgiven. Nothing happens to him. This is another mockery of the Sharia. This is what was happening in the Muslim world. That there was this elite, corrupt, arrogant class of people in power who did whatever they wanted to do. Who broke the law, who disrespected the Sharia, and nothing would happen to them. The third example is that of somebody called Walid bin Uqba. Walid bin Uqba was an open transgressor, an open drunkard. The Holy Quran has a verse that was revealed about him in جَاءَكُمْ فَاسِقٌ بِنَبَإٍ فَتَبَيَّنُوا. The Quran has called him a fasiq. Fasiq is somebody who doesn't just commit a sin once or twice. Somebody who, it is his personality to sin. It is his characteristic to always sin. That's who Walid was. This Walid, there was a time he was made the governor of the city of Kufa. He is so drunk, he comes to lead the prayer of Subh in the morning. Instead of 2 units, 2 rak'ats of prayer, he prays 4 rak'at. And then he turns around to the people and he asks them, you want me to pray more? I can pray more even. And this guy, the Islamic government does not want to implement the punishment of drinking alcohol on him because he is from that elite class of people in power. These were just 3 examples of how the Sharia had been made a mockery of, had been left aside in the Muslim world. Yesterday I read a quote, an important quote from Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam. We're on the way to Karbala in that journey from Medina to Kufa, and then when he got kind of stopped by horror and he ended up going to Karbala. Somewhere along the way, he once gave a speech where he said this. He's talking about how the dunya has changed. إن الدنيا قد تغيرت وتنكرت. Then he goes on to say, ألا ترون أن الحق لا يعمل به وأن الباطل لا يتناهى عنه. O Muslims, do you not see what has happened in the world today? The haqq is not being acted on anymore. The batil, that which is invalid, that which is false, nobody is preventing others from doing it. Nobody is doing nahi anil munkar. And that's just one quote. We can find so many quotes. Go look at the letter that Imam Hussein wrote to the people of Basra, calling them to help him. Again and again, this was something that we see Imam Hussein was hurt by. That the Sharia of Allah, the Book of Allah, the Sunnah of the Prophet had been forgotten in society. So dear brothers and sisters, that's again an important lesson for us. That we have to be people who value, who are sensitive about the Sharia. It's not just a matter of ourselves obeying the Sharia. Of course, we got to do that first of all. Moreover, we got to be upset that we live in a society where the Sharia is being ignored, where indecency is so common, where people can, raise a flag that represents certain indecent actions for 1 month in the year. And all these sins have surrounded us. That should hurt us. As a believer, as somebody who is believing in the Sharia, I should be sensitive to that. I should be wishing that I lived in a community of purity and striving that one day, maybe if it's 1,000 years from now, one day I'm doing tabligh, I am spreading the word of Allah, I am calling people to the haqq. One day maybe I can establish a society that is a society of purity and call people to taqwa. The fundamental foundation of any spirituality, if we're going to have any spirituality in our life, it's not going to come from mustahabbat. Mustahabbat such as remembering Imam Hussein, reading Quran, tawassul, they are very, very important. We need them. But the fundamental foundation of any kind of spirituality is in obeying what is wajib. Allah made it wajib because it was the most important thing to Him. What is wajib and avoiding what is haram. So we have to be people who are somehow in that path of thinking about our actions, learning the ahkam, struggling to control our tongue. How many sins can we commit with our tongue if we don't control our anger? How many sins can we commit with our eyes if we don't control our desires? We have to be people, inshallah, who work on that and who strive to implement that. We pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give us this tawfiq, this opportunity in our lives to work on ourselves, to learn the beautiful teachings of Islam and to implement them in our lives. We pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to hasten the appearance of our Imam, under whose leadership, inshallah, the entire world will be in such a state of taqwa and purity and piety. We pray to Allah that He comes quickly, that He is happy with us, that we are from His helpers, His Shia, those people who are serving His cause, whether we live to see His coming or not, inshallah, we are working towards His cause. We pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He cures all of the believers, all of the Muslims who are sick of any kind of sickness, be it a spiritual sickness or a physical sickness. And lastly, we pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He accepts the hajat and the desires of all the believers, all the Muslimin, and in particular those people who are here today. Assalamu alayka ya Aba Abdillah wa ala al-arwah allati hallat bifinaika alayka minni salamullahi abadan ma baqitu wa baqiya al-laylu wan-nahar wa la ja'ala Allah akhir al-ahd minni ziyaratikum. Brothers and sisters, it is the night of Arbaeen, the night of Ziyarah. Together with me, let us recite these lines. As-salamu ala al-Husayn. 'Alayka min salami Allah abadan ma baqitu wa baqiya al-laylu wan-nahar wa la ja'ala Allah akhir al-ahd minni ziyaratikum. Brothers and sisters, it is the night of Arbaeen, the night of Ziyarah. Together with me, let us recite these lines. As-salamu ala al-Husayn wa ala ali ibn go and see what happened to the family of Aba Abdullah as they left the city of Sham and they made their way back to the city of Medina. Initially, when they were in the city of Sham, Yazid la'natullahi alayhi, he was so happy to see them in their state of being captive, in their state of being humiliated. But the time came that he was so scared that the people of Sham had begun to know who this family was. The people of Sham had begun to send la'nat on Yazid, to love the Ahlul Bayt. He changed all of a sudden, he started to treat them well, he started to put them up in his own residence. The time came that he came to Imam Sajjad alayhi salam and he said to Imam Sajjad, tell me what is it that you want, I can fulfill your desires for you, I can fulfill your hajat. Imam Sajjad alayhi salam, he asked him that, give us back those things that you took from us. And then he said, if you have decided to kill me, then send these women of my family back to the city of Medina, back to the haram of their grandfather. Yazid la'natullahi alayhi, he says, as for killing you, I have forgiven you, I have excused you, I'm not going to kill you. As for the ladies, nobody will take them back to Medina other than you yourself. As for what I have taken from you, I will give you money instead of it. Imam Sajjad says, no, I don't want your money. I want those possessions of Zahra alayhi salam that were taken from us. There was some cloth that had been woven by Fatima, the daughter of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi. There was her hijab, there was her necklace. That's what I want back. Yazid la'natullah alayhi commands that these things be given back, and he gives money to Imam Sajjad. Imam Sajjad distributes that money in charity. He does not want to keep it. The time comes that they are leaving the city of Sham. According to some accounts, they went on their way back to Medina, they went to Karbala. And that is when the blessed heads of the Shuhada, the blessed head of Imam al-Hussein, according to some accounts, was buried along with the body of Imam al-Hussein. But as they are going back to the city of Karbala, there is somebody else who has already reached there. In another account, the companion Jabir, the important companion of the Holy Prophet, he has already come to the city of Karbala. He is the first Zair of Karbala of Imam al-Hussein. He has come with a companion of his called Atiyah. Atiyah narrates what happened, that as they come close to the city of Karbala, Jabir does ghusl in the river of Furat. He starts walking slowly to the blessed grave of Imam al-Hussein, remembering Allah. As he comes close to it, he is an old man. He asks Atiyah, al-Misni, let me touch the grave of Hussein. So Atiyah helps him. Jabir falls unconscious at the grave of Hussein. Atiyah comes with some water and he sprinkles some water on the face of Jabir. Jabir wakes up and he says, Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein. 3 times he calls out to Imam al-Hussein. Then nobody has responded, so he says, Habibun la yujibu Habibahu. Oh Hussein, you are my beloved, I am your beloved. Will you not respond to my call? But then he goes on to say, وَأَنَّا لَكَ بِالْجَوَابِ. Oh Hussein, how can you respond to my call when your head has been severed from your body? The Ahlul Bayt alayhim as-salam and Jabir, they mourn there at Karbala for some time, and then they head back to the city of Medina. As they are coming to the city of Medina, Imam Sajjad alayhi salam, he gets off from his mount, he takes his family off from their mount, he puts up a tent outside the city of Medina. He calls somebody by the name of Bashir. He says, Oh Bashir, may Allah have mercy on you. Your father was a poet. Are you also a poet? Bashir says, yes, I am a poet, O son of Rasulullah. Imam Sajjad tells him, Oh Bashir, go into the city of Medina and do na'i for Aba Abdullah. Lament what has happened to Aba Abdullah. Bashir goes on to his horse and he goes towards the mosque of the Holy Prophet. When he comes to the mosque, he cries out in a loud voice, Ya ahla Yathrib la muqama lakum biha, qutila al-Husayn fa that it had at the time of Jahiliyyah. He says, O people of Medina, O people of Yathrib, there is no place for you anymore. Hussein has been killed and my tears are pouring forth. His body is in Karbala, soaked in his blood, but his blessed head has been going around on the spear. Then he goes on to tell people that Imam Sajjad is here outside the city of Medina with his aunts, with his sisters. I am his messenger to tell you this. All the people of Medina, all the ladies of Medina, they come out crying. He says, فَلَمْ أَرَى بَاكِيًا أَكْثَرَ مِنْ ذَلِكَ الْيَوْمِ وَلَا يَوْمًا أَمَرَّ عَلَى الْمُسْلِمِينَ. Bashir says, I never saw more people weeping than I saw on that day. I never saw something that was more difficult for the Muslims than that day. A little while later, Bashir goes back outside the city of Medina to that tent and he sees Imam Sajjad is giving a khutbah. He's talking to the people who have now gathered around him and he's telling them what happens. I'll just read a few lines from this khutbah. He says, أيها القوم أيها الناس فأي رجالات منكم تسرون بعد قتله. O people, which men folk from amongst you will be happy now that Hussein has been killed? Which heart is there that will not grieve for what has happened? Which eye is there that can hold back its tears for what has happened? Towards the end of this khutbah, he says one line that's very difficult to read. He says, وَاللَّهِ لَوْ أَنَّ النَّبِيِّ تَقَدَّمَ إِلَيْهِمْ فِي قِتَالِنَا كَمَا تَقَدَّمَ إِلَيْهِمْ فِي الْوَصَايَا بِنَا لَمَا ازْدَادُوا عَلَى مَا فَعَلُوا بِنَا. He says, I swear by Allah, had the Muslims been commanded to kill us, instead of the command that they had been given by the Prophet to love us, to take care of us, there's nothing else that they could have done that they didn't do. Dear brothers and sisters, this is one Ali ibn al-Hussein, but tonight is the night of Arbaeen. Whatever we say is less. Let us take our hearts back now to the day of Ashura to remember the other Ali ibn Hussein. Let us remember Ali al-Akbar and what happened to them, what happened to him on that afternoon of Ashura. When Ali al-Akbar, the first of the Banu Hashim, comes to ask permission from his father to go and fight, فَاسْتَأْذَنَ أَبَاهُ فِي الْقِتَالِ فَأَذِنَ لَهُ. This is the Qurbani, this is the Ismail of Hussein. He doesn't hesitate. As soon as he comes to ask permission, Hussein gives him permission. And then what do the books of history say? ثُمَّ نَظَرَ إِلَيْهِ نَظَرَ آيِسٍ مِّنْهُ وَأَرْخَى عَيْنَهُ وَبَكَى. As Ali al-Akbar is going into the battlefield, Hussein takes one look at him in despair and he is weeping. He does dua, Allahumma shahad ala ha'ulai al-qawm faqad baraza ilayhim ghulamun ashbahu an-nasi khalqan wa khuluqan wa mantaqan bi nabiyyik bi rasulik. He says, oh Allah, you bear witness that this young man has gone forward to fight, who is the one who is most similar to the Holy Prophet. Dear brothers and sisters, imagine how much love Hussein had for his grandfather. When he was but a small child, he was parted from his grandfather, and then at this old age, Allah has given him a child that is exactly like the Holy Prophet. When he looks at Ali al-Akbar, he remembers his beloved grandfather. And now this Ali al-Akbar is going to the battlefield and he knows he's not going to come back. Ali al-Akbar goes into the battlefield bravely fighting. Ana Ali ibn al-Husayn ibn Ali. Nahnu wa baytullah awla bin Nabi. He's talking about who he is, who his family is. He fights very bravely. It said that he killed 70 people at this time despite his thirst. At that time, he then comes back to Hussein and he says, Ya Aba al-Atash qad qatalani wa futul al-hadid ajhadani fahal ila sharbatin min ma'i sabil. fight, he fights so bravely that the army of Yazid is scared of him. He's like a lion fighting, and they're scared as he's coming closer. One of them, he says, may all the sins of the Arabs be upon me if he comes towards me, and I don't make his father grieve for him. This mal'oon, as Ali al-Akbar is coming, he pierces Ali al-Akbar with a spear in the back, and Ali al-Akbar falls